want to take you to one website, U.S. College News, Educational News, about just the ranking of the magnet schools. And you can see here, here's the name of them and what they rank, and then here's the ratio of students to teachers, of course, which is quite low, but here's their college readiness scores based on their college prep evaluations stuff, and look at those scores. So you can imagine who is attracted, who they attract. They attract some very bright, talented kids. I say they often, so what they're doing to them now is taking a percentage of kids that aren't as qualified, come from lower economic areas, things like that. Now, we don't have any magnet schools in South Dakota. Our legislature has not yet allowed that, but I'm pretty certain in the future it'll be coming. So let's look at charter schools. Charter schools are most popular option of public school systems. They have created academic institutions, nonprofit foundations, teachers, parents, for a variety of these schools include Missouri schools, Edison schools, experimental learning schools. A number of them have come out, established to a contract. Charter schools are established to a contract with either a state agency or a local school board, usually 3 to 5 years. The contract for charter schools lays out how the school will operate in exchange for receiving public money. So they're still a public school, they're just not as bound to regulations. And here's what it said: charter schools have greater autonomy than traditional public schools and can be released from district and state regulations, such as hiring licensed teachers, following teacher user contracts, and using district textbooks. However, charter schools are still held accountable for student learning, and in most settings having a diverse student body. 2012, 42 states and the District of Columbia had passed legislation to permit and establish charter schools. Arizona, District of Columbia, Michigan, Minnesota are states that have strong charter laws. And the states, okay, as you might expect, with the majority of charter schools located in central cities, over half the students in those schools are African American, Hispanic, and American Indian students. Charter schools are generally smaller than public schools, and over half of them are located in cities. 3 and 4 charter schools are either elementary or combined elementary schools. So it's a way to respond to alternative schools. It allows them to have smaller schools. One of the things that happens in our humongous schools is some of the kids get lost, but what's happening is becoming a bastion for racial diversity. That you don't see the European kids in there, and so that's a concern. They want that racial mix, and it's an alternative setting. They're not bound by the same laws, and again, we're going to study that a little bit, and hopefully you'll have a working vocabulary of that. And this is new on the horizon. You can imagine, just a minute here, wait a minute. I better go back and look at this. What is a charter school? Make this number 15, so you have a little note here. 15 is what's unique about it. Why charter schools? Okay, 15. Now, virtual schools, also known as cyber schools. Virtual course exists across the span of schooling from preschool through college into professional development for teachers and other workers. The number of students enrolled in online courses increased from 45,000 in 2000 to 1.8 million in 9 and 10, and 70% of them being high school students. Did you know that? 70% of all online students are high school students, and by 10-11 school year, 250,000 students enrolled full time. We're a little, we have some of that in South Dakota, but we're a little unaware. Some are full time, and I know some of you did some of this in high school, and you've told me so. Increased over the previous year. At least one full-time virtual school operates in 30 states. Interesting. Most common reason for a student to participate in online school is that the course is not available in their school. That's the number one reason. It's not available in their school building. For example, students in rural areas have taken courses in foreign language and other subjects because teachers of the subjects are hard to get and hard to find. So, how about advanced placement courses? Another one that comes through technology. Second most common reason to take online courses is credit recovery, when students have not completed a course required for graduation. Online technology all provide a valuable resource for students for being homeschooled. I would bet that's the third one. Virtual schools are generally tuition-free public charter schools. 40 states operate virtual schools or manage state-led online initiatives. Okay. So again, let's go here and tell me what virtual schools are. And vouchers are a little different. Most controversial school choice option in 2011 vouchers is school vouchers. Is the simplest a voucher program issue. Okay, let me start again. Most controversial school choice option is school vouchers. Have you heard of these? Have you heard of school vouchers? It's died down a little bit, and I'll tell you why in a minute, but it's the simplest at its simplest, it's a voucher program issues a check or a credit that can be used by parents to send their children to a private school. Generally, the argument for vouchers is based on equalizing educational opportunities for students of color and students from low-income families whose children may be attending schools that are not meeting No Child Left Behind adequate yearly progress. This is what the National No Child Left Behind law said, is if your school was not meeting adequate yearly progress, your student could take their money and go to another school, including private schools in a lot of states. And everybody was held to that until the current administration came, and they didn't overturn No Child Left Behind. They simply gave waivers to states that they felt deserved them. So advocates often argue that vouchers are a market-driven strategy that will force public schools to compete with private schools, leading to improvement in both. That was the idea. That if these kids were leaving, these poor and minority kids were leaving the public schools to go to private schools, it would force them both to become better. And then the proponents also argued that parents of private schools pay twice the tuition for the private school and the tax dollar for the public school. Opponents worried that vouchers may encourage the most highly motivated students to abandon public schools, and that was the huge outcry, that the good kids are all going to leave and go to private schools. So, first was Wisconsin adopted the first law that allowed low-income families in Milwaukee to move their children from public to a private school with a voucher for public funds. Ohio adopted a similar voucher for Cleveland families in '96. The most expansive use of vouchers is the District of Columbia as a result of Congress enacting opportunity scholarship programs in 2004. Although Congress closed this DC program, Congress didn't. This president, the current president, closed it. Voucher program. It was President Barack Obama. It was back in President Barack Obama's budget in 2011. It didn't pass. They didn't pass a budget, and so there was. I'm not sure that's a true statement at all, but it was in the budget. If it was, I don't know. But they never passed a budget, and there's still no voucher system in Washington D.C. There was from '94 until 2009. When this president was inaugurated, and it was one of the first things he did was kill the voucher program in Washington, D.C. Most voucher programs are funded with state tax dollars. Legislation that supported early voucher programs limited them to low-income families, and that was one solution. State legislation 11 expanded the availability of vouchers to middle-class families in Indiana, Wisconsin, to families in Douglas County, Colorado. Not all voucher programs are publicly funded. Some are funded by private foundations. Typically, the amount of voucher is equivalent to what the public school would get for that student. So if for example, in South Dakota, it's close to $6,000 tax dollars follow each, or state dollars follow each student. So you could take that $6,000 to the private school. We don't have this in South Dakota, but if we did, that's generally what the voucher is for, is the amount of whatever this public school would get. The debates about vouchers center on the use of public dollars to support private schools. The most serious point of contention is when a voucher funded with state education money is used to pay for a child to attend a religious affiliated school, which are the main beneficiaries of these vouchers. They're generally not taking their money and going to secular schools. They're going to private schools. And so some opponents have claimed that vouchers raise constitutional questions, as you know, about church and state, separation of church and state. But the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that Cleveland's school voucher program was constitutional under the Federal Establishment Clause of the First Amendment. Now, this part's interesting too, and I want you to grab this. Research on voucher programs have found that students' academic achievement has not improved as a result of vouchers, but parents may be more satisfied because of the conditions of safety in the private schools they have chosen, and they are better than public schools, and their children who have attended. Graduation rates have been higher for students with vouchers than for those who remained in the public schools. But researchers have not been able to determine whether this difference is due to the private school or the motivation of the parents who move their children to private school. So this is still teetering. A lot of fire out there, but it was just saying, couldn't the poor kids have the chance to go to these good private religious schools also? And because you're poor and live in a poor part of town, should that mean you can never go to a good private school? And that's what drove this. And you haven't heard the last of it. Teachers unions go crazy over this. The good kids are all going to leave us, all that. And another idea behind it was to force everybody to get better. And I think that has happened. I think all these charters and magnets haven't forced them to get better, but I don't have any proof of that. You know how I like proof. So let me jump back here on vouchers, and you give a little explanation of vouchers. Number 17. Private. They've been an integral part since the beginning. Students from all racial, religious, economic, and language backgrounds. Some are progressive and innovative. Some are conservative and traditional. They are large and small, day and boarding, single-sex, coeducational. They include Montessori, special ed, vocational, technical, alternative, preschools. All are private. They range from elite secondary schools, mainly in the Northeast, to alternative schools for high school dropouts, or faith-supported schools, or schools that are operated for profit. The majority our private schools are at the elementary level, with only 8% of the secondary level. More students are enrolled in private kindergartens than any other grade level. Private schools are more likely to be located in cities than in suburbs than in rural areas. Okay, so first of all, a parochial school. 4 in 5 private schools attend a school supported by a religious group. The culture of parochial school may have a positive impact on student achievement. Some researchers have found that students at religious schools, especially African American and Hispanics, perform better on standardized tests than their public school peers. Boy, I bet it's got to be hard to put that down. That's the thing. And one of the things we're never going to attribute it to is the religious aspect. We're going to make a case here that it's because it's private, but people of faith would say the reason is also it's a school of faith. Make sure I'm on here. Many religious groups sponsor schools, including Amish, Muslim, Jews, Quakers, Catholics, and many, many Protestant groups. And here they are. And of course, the biggest is the Roman Catholic. And this is the fastest growing one, is the non-sectarian, meaning it's a religious private school. It's just not affiliated with any of the religions. Okay. Although enrollment in Roman Catholics is higher than in other private schools, it decreased from 45% total enrollment to private schools in this. Okay, so what about parochial schools? Tell me a little bit about these. This is number 18. And first of all, what it is. What is a parochial school? And what groups serve it? It gave you a list. The text gives you a list of who all have parochial schools. And do they have higher achievement? Absolutely. Is it because they're private? Maybe. Can it have anything to do with their faith-based schools? The text doesn't address that, and I suppose they wouldn't dare. How about a single-sex education? Sounds a little weird, but yeah. Most single-sex schools and colleges today are private, and sure of helping their students. I have not heard of a public school that's single-sex. That just wouldn't fly, even though they have some pretty solid research at learning is improved. Test scores are better out of those, but it's not politically correct. Schools, colleges, they are private. Academic achievement, leadership skills by building their unique learning styles and cultural experience. Schools or academies in some urban areas have been established for young African men with the goal of improving their opportunities for enrolling in being successful in college life. All girls and all boys schools are more likely to be at the secondary level than any others. In fact, 15% and 13% of all private secondary schools are all boys or all girls respectively. Likely to be in the Northeast. So not 13 to 15 of all schools, of all private schools, are same-sex schools. I read one time that the research shows that that's pretty well, but they bury that. Well, think of a public school that was all one sex, it just wouldn't fly. But they're finding that the learning is better, the results are better. What I want you to put here for number 19 is just private. Just private, but better. I know. You don't want to go to a same-sex school either, but don't argue with the facts that the learning is better. What about homeschooling? Requires no public support. Instead, children learn from home from their parents, serving as a teacher, and an estimated 2 million. It's funny they can estimate. It's funny they don't know that should be a stat. Being schooled at home, representing, can you get this? A fast escalating number. 3.9% of kids, K-12 kids, are homeschooled. That's up from 1.7 in '99. So it's a growing number. Although the educational program for 84% of homeschool students is provided totally at home, others attend school for 9 to 20 hours a week. Homeschool students sometimes participate in sports and their extracurricular activities. The local public school. I don't think we allow this in South Dakota. I know it's been much controversy and it's been changed a number of times, but can you be homeschooled and come and play on the team is a big point of contention. Teaching a homeschool student requires parents to know the subjects they are teaching, organize each day's instruction, facilitate their learning. One of the advantages of potential weakness is that most days subjects are taught are self-determined. This can work in favor of students' interests due to gaps in their education. Why do parents choose to homeschool children? In a national survey of parents, 3 reasons were prominent. 1 in 3 parents indicated they wanted to provide religious or moral instruction. Not available in school, not allowed in school. 1 in 5 parents was concerned about the school environment. And 17% of parents were dissatisfied with the academic instruction. So that's what you get here. Number 20 is why. 3 reasons. Okay. The evidence is clear that homeschooling is a success for many students. Studies have found that homeschool students score 15 to 30 percentile points above the public school peers. And that's the part that nobody talks about. That's the part where they win. They are 15 to 30 percentile points above the rest on the ACT and SAT scores. Or all scores on their standardized academic tests. Homeschooled high school students score an average ACT well above that. So there. Our research studies are not yet able to determine whether the higher achievement to these students is due to homeschooling. They may have scored at the same level if they attended public schools. Get that? They may have attended. Maybe they would have. I don't know. That's a big gap, though. That's a big gap to say it's random. Then what about innovative options? You are beginning to see teaching career, a very exciting time in which teaching and learning may break out of the classroom mode and exist in most schools over the past century. Seat time requirements. Many are eliminating seat time, meaning how many days you have to attend. and to change the school funding, textbook requirements, teacher evaluation requirements, you are not quite likely to teach one or more courses electronically, especially because states are beginning to require online learning before graduation. And that's what at DSU, I don't think you should be able to graduate from DSU unless you've taken an online course. You may be teaching and coaching students who you seldom or never see. You may live in a different state or possibly a different country. I have had people in my online courses that were in different countries. They were citizens, but they were in a station for other reasons, or were residing in other countries. Advocates for these and other innovative options argue that they will serve students more effectively in current teaching strategies and school structures. So online and hybrid, that's innovative options. I'll just write other countries here. Countries. Then what's an online hybrid? Well, could be synchronous or asynchronous, and I teach all synchronous courses. Synchronous meaning different time, different place, which occurs over there with synchronous or non-synchronous instruction, becoming common in P12 settings. Graduation, 38% of high school students and 19% of middle school students take online courses. Although 78% of these students access online courses from home, most acquire those at school. Hybrid or blended programs combine online work with face-to-face, and you've heard that term, I'm sure. The hybrid approach is the most common at this time, but full-time online programs and virtual schools are growing each year. So you tell me what these are. Number 21. What is online and hybrid learning? So what is the personalization technology allowing education to be customized for each student? Tasks have been very difficult in classrooms for 30 students. Allowing students to work at their own pace and a different time at these Khan academies. The website includes this, so you give me a little description of this. Is number 22. How would you personalize it? Okay, let's look at the different levels in school, and this you're more familiar with. This will be a nice review for you, and so I'm not going to peddle with this too much. I'm just going to do an overview and then ask you to carry it from here. First, there's the early childhood look of the Head Start with like Montessori, High Scope, Reggio Emilia thing, and then elementary schools, just looping and resource teachers. Make sure you get that. In middle level, interdisciplinary team teaching, block scheduling, traditional high schools. So what I'm going to do is break these down and ask you to give a little report on each one. This is number 22, I believe, and I'll take you over to this page, and this is number 23. Rather than me go through and read this all to you and tell you about this, I'm going to let you read this, and I'm going to implore you to read this. It's a pretty good read on each of these things here. So number 22 and 23 right there, just giving a little report on each of those. For example, on the middle level, I want you to divide a little bit between junior high and middle school and what that was about. See if you can discern that from there in there. Okay, so let me just fly over here if I could. This early childhood stuff here in my book's a little slow today. This is interesting to read about what's happened to play, how we've got the kids so scheduled that they don't get to play anymore. And this about elementary schools and the size. Here's the resource teacher and the looping that I want you to do. But again, I say I implore you to read the whole thing. Here it talks, each one of these levels talks about the origin of it at the beginning, and then talks about why they did what they did. And then we get into high schools. Born in 1821. Here in the middle, I highlight fewer students are completing high school within 4 years, with more than 50% of African Americans, Hispanic male students dropping out of school. Only 3 in 5 students with disabilities earn a regular school diploma, which increased in the past 15 years. And they don't talk about Native Americans here, but their rate is higher for that of not completing And then, of course, that how are these kids prepared for post-secondary? We just talked about earlier in the chapter that 62% of the jobs will need post-secondary training, and it's not addressed. If you have more than 50% dropping out, how are they going to be able to, right here, limit their future job opportunities with not even finishing high school? So traditionally, secondary school is generally larger. 12% of them is in need of improvement, which I think that's a good number. If there's only 12% and No Child Left Behind were identified as needs improvement, I thought that was a good number, because only 58% of secondary schools offer at least one advanced placement course. A number of students do not have access to higher level courses. And again, that's where the technology can really alter that. If only 58% offer at least one advanced. This is interesting here. High schools today are being attacked as wastelands for young people. The curriculum and structure appear to have changed little over the 50 years. I don't think that's true. They're condemned for not integrating technology, critical thinking, and problem solving in the curriculum. Too many graduates are not proficient in math and reading and are not competitive on international tests with peers in Canada, Japan, and South Korea. As a result, governors and business organizations have established committees to reform schools. And that's what this up here was. I was back a page where it talked about how many were not proficient. Oh, here it is. Here, 12th grade students at the proficient level or above by race and ethnicity. In South Dakota, we're higher than this. And each of your schools will have a report card of how many are proficient stuff. But you're saying, okay, these dang Asians kind of blow the thing apart all the time because they don't fit the minority pattern narrative we like to tell. Students in approximately 2,000 of the lowest performing high schools account for the highest dropout rates. So go figure, and you would have known that too, that the poorer the school is, the more likely the dropout rate is. In these schools, 60% or less of the freshman class finish high school. So the lowest 2,000, I'm going to highlight this and you can put this in your notes. The lowest 2,000 performing schools account for the highest dropout rate, as many as 60% dropout. Okay. Many of the dropouts are lost in the 9th grade as students learn that they have not been prepared for the academic work of high school. As many as 40% of these 9th graders repeat the 9th grade. Only 10 to 15% of these repeaters end up graduating. Low attendance rates and failing grades in middle school have been found to be predictors of dropping out. African Americans and American Indian and Hispanic students are being hurt the most by these conditions, at 6 times more likely than white students to attend these low-performing schools. Why? Because often they're in low-income areas, is why the minority kids tend to be in there most. And what is hard, and this is what you'll arrive at if you haven't already, is the education is still the silver bullet to get out of that lifestyle. But what happens is we're getting into the 10th and 11th generation now. And some of the Native Americans, more than that, goes back hundreds of years of this, from some of the early treaties of, taking care of them in perpetuity-wise, of providing for their needs. So, in high school reform, among the most reforms is the creation of small high schools to promote stronger relationships. And we're seeing some of that now in Sioux Falls, where they're trying to create schools within the schools. These small schools were sometimes standalone schools, and other times schools within larger schools. Both the development of small high schools and research about small schools have been supported by private funding, such as Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. Mixed results about the effectiveness of this effort. One of the success stories has been New York City, where 23 large failing high schools were replaced by 216 small high schools. They were able to reduce the risk of dropping out. The 9th graders increased graduation rates. Other innovations projections are integrating technology and hands-on learning throughout the high school curriculum. One example, acclaimed High Tech High, which was operating 11 charter schools. Diverse student bodies in San Diego, Chula Vista, and San Marcos. They integrated technical and academic education and hands-on approach. So you're seeing more of that different approach to it. Another innovative approach, a new tech network, was founded in Napa, California. Faculty at 86 public high schools in 16 states used a project-based approach to engage students. Students actively engage in technology as a primary tool of learning process. And you've heard of that too. So there's those, and just stop now and go ahead and do those. Sense of place, like rural communities, 2,500 residents or less. Long travel distance to school. School structure is less stratified, less diversity, teacher shortages. Schools are prized by communities, and that's what I was talking about earlier. The school is the hub of the community. Everything that happens in the community surrounds what's going on at school, and school often becomes a community center. If you need community events, they're held in school buildings also. Then more suburban, half the population lives in suburbs, and more diversity there, better funding for schools, more elite families or families make more money there, and of course there are larger enrollments. And then urban, they're more rich in educational and entertainment resources, diverse populations, less experienced teachers, highly centralized, authoritative, and bureaucrats there. Yeah, let me go back to the text and have a look at it. And I won't have you do any of this, but you know this about our rural. And all I can say is please read this. There's questions on the tests about this area. Like high-tech companies have found that suburb ideal for research and development of software electronics. Families may move from cities to the suburbs and ensure their children receive a better education. Although overall racial and ethnic diversity of suburban schools districts has increased, diversity has been limited. Okay. Then urban communities, and again, you've seen those looks. Also, we have those around here. Oh, there's a chart how diverse the schools are. If they looked at the top 100 high schools, not top, the largest 100 high schools, and what percentage of this, see the black community, Hispanic, and white community, less of those, mostly Hispanic in those. This is free or reduced lunches. These are kids that have disabilities and IEPs. So more than half the kids get free or reduced lunches in the 100 biggest. Cultural capital, there's a question on the test about cultural capital. Okay, chapter 6.